Last week, we reported on the 7 aid workers who were killed by an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. Since then, the IDF have released their official investigative report findings, and as a result, they dismissed several high-ranking military officers who they deemed did not follow official IDF protocol. However, the question remains, who was actually at fault for these aid workers who were killed? Was Hamas using them as human shields? Was the World Central Kitchen employees embedded with Hamas like the photographers were on October 7th? Or what did Hamas simply hold them at gunpoint, commandeer their convoy, and force them to drive with them? Either way, it seems that the blame does not lie with Israel, but it lies squarely elsewhere. All those details and a whole lot more coming up on today's episode. I'm Luke Hilton. This is the Israel Guys. Hello and welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Guys, we appreciate it if you'd subscribe, hit those notifications, let us know in the comments if you're a new viewer. Subscribe whether you listen, watch, whatever platform you're on, give us a follow, give us a subscribe. And guys, the Israel Summit, May 20th through 22nd is coming together. It's super exciting. I'm so excited about all the speakers, more and more being confirmed every day, the concert, the videos we have, and really the goal is to educate you guys so that you have the knowledge you need to stand squarely with Israel. A lot of people know, why should we stand against a Palestinian state? Is that anti-Palestinian? You know, why should we be against a two-state solution? Does Israel really have the right to be sovereign? We're going to answer all those questions. This is going to be an educational event like no other. Go to theisraelguys.com/summit or click the link down in the description below. Please consider signing up and joining us for 3 days in Nashville, Tennessee, May 20th through 22nd. So, as you guys know, 7 aid workers were killed in Gaza in what appears to be a very tragic Israeli airstrike last Monday. I believe it was April 1st when the 7 aid workers were killed. And a lot of people say, well, Israel definitely knew. Candace Owens came out on Twitter saying that there's no way Israel didn't know, and they did this on purpose, just like they're doing tons of other things on purpose and basically committing genocide in Gaza. So it bears revisiting the topic again, especially because Israel's military came out with their official findings, and you know what? They took the blame. They said this should not have happened. We didn't follow, or the officers that were in charge did not follow official protocol to the letter, and therefore we have dismissed them, and we say we are to blame, and we're very sorry. This is very tragic. This is war. Unfortunate, very tragic things happen in wartime. But I want to read you a few things from their official report. They did present this report to the World Central Kitchen, where the aid workers, the 7 workers that were killed, were from the World Central Kitchen, who were bringing food to Gazans, as well as members of the media. So a couple of quotes, or a couple of parts from the IDF report. Quote, the event occurred on April 1st, 2024 during an operation to transfer humanitarian aid from the WCK to the Gaza Strip. The investigation found that the forces, IDF, identified a gunman on one of the aid trucks, terrorist, following which they identified an additional gunman. Okay, so just to clarify, we now know the IDF sees aid trucks coming into Gaza, and then they see terrorists, either Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad, probably Hamas terrorists riding with the trucks, right? Okay. The report goes on to say, after the vehicles left the warehouse, okay, so the vehicles come into a warehouse, unload, load, whatever they're doing, and had been unloaded, one of the commanders mistakenly assumed that the gunmen were located inside the accompanying vehicles and that these were Hamas terrorists, okay? Vehicles, World Central Kitchen, go into a warehouse with terrorists embedded with them. They unload, they come back out of the warehouse. Now the IDF makes their crucial mistake. They mistake the vehicles for the Hamas terrorist vehicles, and which were actual Hamas members. And that's when the tragic mistake happens, right? The report goes on to say, quote, the forces did not identify the vehicles in question as being associated with WCK. Following a misidentification by the forces targeted the 3 WCK vehicles based on the misclassification of the event and misidentification of the vehicles as having Hamas operatives inside them, with the resulting strike leading to the deaths of 7 innocent humanitarian aid workers. Okay, obviously, and like I said, the IDF has taken full responsibility. This was a serious operational error. But we also know there were terrorists embedded with these vehicles, and that's where the error comes in. The report says that the strike was carried out in serious violation of the commands and IDF standard operating procedures. Now, if this was any other military in the world and any other conflict in the world, then this strike can be considered a necessary casualty of war, right? Like the American military in Afghanistan, if this was happening there, because you have terrorists embedded with civilians, right? But no, the IDF's protocol and standard operating procedures are so much higher that they've now fired the officers who were in charge, who initiated and authorized this airstrike, because their standard operating procedures were not followed, because they have such a high standard of their morals are so incredibly high, right? My question is, who's actually responsible for these 7 deaths? Because terrorists were embedded with the convoy, right? We know that. And if you say, well, that's just the IDF saying that, I don't want to hear it, okay? And Candace Owens, saying, obviously people like Candace Owens would rather believe Hamas than the IDF, because the IDF is so biased and they're intentionally committing genocide in Gaza, right? No, I don't want to hear that, okay? This is the IDF, one of the most moral military, probably more moral and having higher standards than the United States military, okay? And the only democracy, like the main democracy in the Middle East. In times of uncertainty, as the shadow of conflict looms over the land of Israel, our hearts go out to those bravely standing on the front lines of freedom, to those who are suffering because of the evil of Hamas. How can we, living thousands of miles away, lend our strength and support to Israel? The answer lies not in the might of arms, but in the power of prayer. The Israel Bible Book of Psalms Pray Like David edition offers more than words, it offers a connection. This special edition serves as a spiritual bridge, linking us to the ancient but ever-relevant prayers of King David. Each page, each verse, and each word, now accessible like never before, calls out for peace, guidance, and strength. This isn't just any book, it's a call to arms for the faithful, an invitation to join a global prayer movement. Your voice, united with millions around the globe, can move mountains and bring peace to the people of Israel. Guys, let's stand together in prayer and call out to God with David's words. Your prayer, your voice is needed now more than ever. Please visit the link in the description below to learn how you can pray for Israel like never before. Get your copy of the Israel Bible Book of Psalms Pray Like David edition today. Just click the link in the description below. I got 3 potential scenarios here. A, Hamas had commandeered the aid convoy and forced World Central Kitchen to have terrorists accompany them. Maybe keep them safe, right? Maybe just to tempt the IDF to strike them. Or B, World Central Kitchen was complicit with Hamas, just like the photographers were on October 7th, and allowed Hamas terrorists to accompany them. Not saying this is actually what happened, but we do know it's happened multiple times. We do know that other aid organizations are in bed with Hamas. We do know that journalists are in bed with Hamas. We know that UNRWA workers are complicit with Hamas. So we can't rule out that possibility, right? Or C, and this option is similar to A, that Hamas had terrorists riding with the World Central Kitchen to try and get the IDF to target them, effectively using them as human shields. Again, who was responsible for these deaths? Seems to me like there was at least a 60% chance that Hamas is responsible, and there's a small chance that it was the World Central Kitchen organization themselves, or at least the workers, who were also partially responsible, if it's possible that they were in cahoots with Hamas, which again is not impossible because it has happened multiple times before, including on October 7th. Now, Candace Owens, like I mentioned, tweeted this past week. She said, quote, "I'm not sure why it took an aid truck being blown up for the public to believe that Israel was intentionally stopping food and aid from entering the region, but I'm glad at the very least the tragedy is fostering the right conversation everywhere." To be clear, this article, the one I'm about to read you, is written by an MI6 chief explaining how this food and aid truck had to be specifically targeted. Read it before you get mad at me. The claim that the IDF has been doing this has been debated for months. This particular situation seems undeniable given his description. Now, I'm going to pull a few things out of the article that was in the UK Daily Mail, which Candace Owens is referencing here, written by an MI6 chief, which I guess automatically makes it an authority or makes it credible or something like that. And also her insinuation that, like, obviously this has been happening over and over and again in Gaza, but now we're finally finding out the truth, right? It's just so, again, her claims that she's not anti-Semitic is just ridiculous. If you guys have been following any of the drama on social media around Candace Owens, you know that she's just digging herself in further and further into a hole. I don't have time to get into too much more of Candace Owens right now, but this article in the Daily Mail UK, written by an MI6 chief, so obviously it's credible, right? Now, I read through the article and very quickly spotted its bias, and I'm just going to pull that out to you. Now, first of all, there's a few paragraphs in the beginning that actually try to make a case as to why Israel intentionally targeted the aid truck for the 7 aid workers, right? But they didn't really give very much information. They just spent a couple articles on that, and then they just spent the whole rest of the article talking about why they hate Israel so much and why Israel's at fault for the war in Gaza. So it began, basically their main premise is that Israel is so sophisticated, there's no way they didn't know that the truck was a World Central Kitchen truck. As if civilians were never killed in war as a byproduct or as a casualty of war, as if that never happens, right? Even in sophisticated, 21st century wars, right? That just can't happen because you have a sophisticated country like Israel fighting a war against a horrific ISIS-like terrorist organization who likes to use human shields. That just can't happen. That's pretty much it. The article just says, Israel's so sophisticated, there's no way they couldn't have known that the truck was an aid truck, and therefore they intentionally blew it up, right? And then, like right within like the fourth or fifth article paragraph in the article, it really shows its true bias. And I'm going to quote it to you. Quote, meanwhile, former MI6 chief Sir Alex Younger labeled Israel's war in Gaza as, quote, reckless, and said such incidents undermine Tel Aviv's insistence the attacks on Hamas are morally justifiable following October 7th. There you go. Article shows its true bias, basically saying this entire war is unjustifiable and that Israel is not a moral nation for fighting Hamas in Gaza. And then it goes on later in the article to claim that Gazans are starving, they're eating less than 250 calories per day. All that is probably not true. They're just false claims. And then it goes on towards the end of the article. It says, quote, the war began with Hamas's October 7th attack, which resulted in the deaths of about 1,170 Israelis and foreigners, mostly civilian, according to an AFP tally based on Israeli official figures. Now, they're going to talk about deaths in Israel on October 7th versus deaths in Gaza here in a second. And I want you to spot the difference in these two, okay? First, they say, the war began with Hamas's October 7th attack, which resulted in the deaths of nearly 1,200 Israelis. Did you catch that? Hamas didn't murder 1,200 Israelis. Hamas started an attack, and this attack resulted in the deaths of, okay? Now, goes on to say, Israel's retaliatory campaign has killed at least 32,975 people, mostly women and children, according to the health ministry in Gaza. Did you spot that bias? Like, how bad can it get? And again, this is the source written by an MI6 chief that Candace Owens is quoting so glibly on Twitter as the proof of why Israel is deliberately committing genocide in Gaza. Again, Hamas started an attack which resulted in about 1,200 Israeli deaths. And then Israel had started a retaliatory campaign to take vengeance and retaliation, which has killed at least 32,000 people, most of whom are women and children. By the way, did not mention that Israel started defending themselves, and during that war, that many people have been killed, if those numbers are accurate, because the numbers come from Hamas themselves, and did not mention that those numbers include Hamas terrorists, okay? Again, not even differentiating between civilians and Hamas terrorists, which we know a ton of those numbers, if those numbers are even accurate, which they're not, are terrorists themselves. The article goes on to say, Palestinian militants, not terrorists, Palestinian militants, aka freedom fighters, took more than 250 hostages on October 7th. 130 remain in Gaza. Again, guys, how can we even trust an article that is so incredibly biased? Candace Owens, how can you trust an article? I don't care if it's an MI6 chief writing in the Daily Mail. This article is so incredibly biased that there's just no way we can trust anything they say. And as for the claim that people are starving, I know this, I've covered this before. I just want to show you guys some photos. Check out this photo. You think these people in Gaza are starving? This open air market selling food even in the midst of war? Maybe this photo. I just randomly found these photos within 5 minutes. You can go check for yourself. Whatever social media platform you're on, just start typing in photo, look for photos of food in Gaza, people starving in Gaza, try to look past the propaganda and find out what's really happening. And then I stumbled on this short video I'm going to play for you because it makes so much sense, okay? Watch this video.
Is there famine in Gaza? If so, is it Israel's fault? I am here with a math lesson. Not girl math, actual math. So far, Israel has sent in about 234,000 tons of food to Gaza. According to calculations based on the UN's World Food Program, it would take 4,287 tons of food to feed the 2.2 million Palestinians in Gaza for 1 week. So how long could this 234,000 tons of food last the entire population of Gaza? Well, what is 234,000, the amount of food sent in by Israel so far, divided by 4,287, the amount of food needed per week to feed the 2.2 million civilians of Gaza? Well, look at that. It's 54.58, meaning enough food for 54 and a half weeks. That's over a year. How many weeks has this war been going on? About 25. So according to basic math, Israel has sent in more than double the amount of food needed. Perplexing, isn't it? Do you know what's even more interesting? More food has gone into Gaza from Israel than before this war even started on October 7th. And yet, we keep hearing that Israel is trying to starve Palestinians and withhold aid. We are living in a world where people will sooner believe a murderous terrorist organization rather than the facts of basic math and the reality of the truth. So what is happening to all that aid? Well, we know for a fact that Hamas is stealing much of it, and they do this to take care of themselves, to control the distribution of the goods, and to strengthen their position as the rulers of Gaza. They have no problem forcing their civilians to suffer in order to turn the world against Israel. Hamas's goal is to create an image of a serious humanitarian crisis in Gaza and then to blame Israel for it. And it's working, even though it is based on lies, thievery, and terror. But despite it all, Israel continues to send in humanitarian aid to Gaza, not because international law compels them to, not because world opinion compels them to, but because it is their moral code, because Israel actually cares about the civilians of Gaza, unlike Hamas. Do not believe Hamas's lies. Please share this video and spread the truth.
Again, finally, some clear-headed thinking people with some clear thinking statistics. But again, I mean, like simple math, like she said, right? Simple math. How much food has gone into Gaza? How many people are in Gaza? How many days has it been? Are the people of Gaza actually starving? The answer is undoubtedly no, right? But like I said before, non-clear thinking people, such as Candace Owens, would rather believe Hamas and rather believe terrorists in Gaza and then the terrorist-controlled health ministry in Gaza than the IDF or first world democratic nations such as Israel. Even Candace Owens, though, she has such an anti-Semitic slant in reporting that, as you saw, she would rather believe an article in the Daily Mail written by an MI6 chief, even though they have incredible bias and they demonstrate that clearly and publicly in the article, than Israel's defense forces. Guys, you can think for yourselves. You can see for yourselves. Please just look this stuff up. Look at my source links. Check out these videos. Check out the photos that we've shown. Make your own decisions and don't believe the slanted, biased, anti-Semitic reporting that you see on social media or in the mainstream media. Guys, make sure and get your copy of the Israel Bible Book of Psalms. Pray Like David edition. Just check out the link down in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. As always, tune out the fake news and tune into what is actually happening here in the land of Israel. We're here every single day with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.